This is Dave from Wet Fly Swing, and I'm happy to have on Mitch and Aldo from the SoFly podcast. How you guys doing?
Very well. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you, Dave.
Awesome. Yeah, this is really cool. I think, I don't know if you guys have the episode, but it was a little bit ago, earlier this year, I was on your podcast, and we talked about various things. We'll put a link in the show notes to that, but now we've got you guys on our podcast here. So we're going to talk, and you're kind of in the Ontario area. You guys have a bunch of great episodes. I'm not sure. I think you guys, what are you at? Over 150, right? Getting towards 200?
Yeah, we're getting up there. We're like 181, 180, something like
180,
that.
yeah. We just did 180, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
180. What do you guys think? Do you have a goal where you look at, you say, man, I want to get a 500. I want to get 1,000. Do you?
Honestly, 200 for now has been the goal for a long time, and then we're gonna quit. So yeah.
No.
I think it's next. I think it's gonna be in like September. We hit it. End of September, we hit 200.
Yeah.
So
200.
we're gonna go crazy. Yeah.
Amazing. Do you guys do anything special when you turn over each century mark?
Oh yeah. Well, we.
What did we do for episode 100?
It's for us. Like nobody cares, but like we did a show and we do it. I think we did a giveaway for 100, and maybe for 150 we did something, and then me and Aldo go out and get cocktails.
Right. There you go. And
Pretty
you guys,
much, yeah.
Are you able to? Do you drink on the podcast? I know occasionally, right? There's no problem with low alcohol there.
From time to time, we've had a couple beer friends come in and out, and we've been happy to partake in their beverages during a show. But
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
More so in the early days than kind of now.
Lately it's been a lot of green tea and coffees and stuff like that.
Yeah, gotcha. Nice.
As we approach 40.
Right, exactly. I know that's the funny thing about this is that it doesn't get any easier. You can't stay up all night and get ready for that trip and sleep 2 hours and then get on the road right anymore.
Oh my God, I know.
No. The excitement is the same, which is cool. But I feel you. Physically, it's like, geez.
It is funny listening to some of those early episodes. We're just like, our first sponsor was a whiskey brand.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, because I come from the hospitality world, and I was like, I think we could probably get one of my suppliers as a sponsor. And so
it was beautiful.
It's funny to mention. Yeah, we used to always start the podcast with
cocktail.
"What are you drinking?" Was how we started it. Yeah,
that's right.
It was like a theme, man.
Yeah, totally. What's it been like now? I mean, you've got 200. You're looking out at 200. How has this been? It's been what at least a couple years, right?
Oh, it's been a long time. Dave. We started this thing in 2015 is when first had this idea to do something in fly fishing, do something creative in fly fishing.
Yeah.
And that's when I met Yilma, who was the third host, who quit recently. Yilma. And we're very mad about it.
Really?
No.
It's totally cool. But yeah, we started it dreaming this up in 2015, and then in 2016, January something, we did the first episode. So it's been almost 10 years, and yeah, I would say the excitement and the energy is still very high. It's such a good time to do stuff like this. Like the creator world is just blown up in that time frame. I would say even in the last 4 or 5 years, it's been all of a sudden now, my nieces and nephews are I want to be a creator when I grow up. And I'm like, that is so weird to even think about. So
right.
I don't know, there's so much excitement around just being creative and doing stuff very grassroots, DIY kind of stuff. So it doesn't feel like 10 years.
Well, I think too, you and Yilma are creatives on a day-to-day basis, so it's cool to get back into storytelling and
do something for us and not for a client, and actually get to say ideas and make them happen versus in advertising, most of your ideas die.
Yeah, right.
So
right.
It's cool to have a side thing,
Yeah, you guys. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, 10 years, and you guys have been going strong. You've pretty much. I think you do episode every 2 weeks now, right? Is that what's been going for the last few years?
Yep. Since COVID.
Well, before that.
Was it? I thought it was the lockdown. We were we got nothing to do now.
The lockdown was when we did one every week.
Oh my God, that's right.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we did one because we had nothing to do, and so we were just well,
when you guys did every week, was that a lot more work?
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it didn't. I don't know. I can't speak for Mitch, but it felt like it filled up certainly my time, which was nice. But yeah, it's the two shows a month.
It's a nice balance. Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of started that. Yeah, pretty shortly after I joined on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. which was I was a guest actually on episode
Oh, wow.
17.
Okay.
And then
In 2017, right? 2018?
2017. Yeah, it was episode 17, 2017, and then Mitch asked me to join as a co-host, and we've been friends ever since and working on this ever since. It's been awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I want to talk today. We're probably going to touch a little on Ontario. We've done a number of podcasts in your neck of the woods. In fact, I just had one on the one coming. Alex Parks is coming up here.
Oh, great.
Yeah, new fly fisher,
rad.
right? She's awesome. So that's coming up.
Sure.
Actually, that'll probably be out by the time this goes live. And yeah, it just seems like Ontario. It seems like a hot spot to me. I mean, actually, when you think about it, you're pretty much right in there with the U.S. It drops down. You're at the same latitude as Michigan, New York. You're kind of. It's not like you're in the. I said that to Alex. You're not in the frozen tundra. You know, you might not have the same trout, but you guys have a pretty good climate. Talk about that. Do you guys get out fishing a lot more in Ontario, or do you try to get around the country?
We do a lot of fishing around Ontario. I mean, like that was sort of just like when we started the podcast. It was like, well, you know, like our province is huge. You know, like you're saying, you can be in Southern Ontario and experience something very different from when you're really far north, 12 hours north. It's a very different beast. But we've traveled all over the world. I mean, Aldo, you love recently the saltwater thing over the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
Really taken to that. I mean, it's awesome. But
yeah.
So yeah, a ton of Ontario, but I would say kind of everywhere we can get to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the cool thing about Ontario too is, like you're saying, we do have a lot of multi-species opportunities here. We mentioned already, we grew up in Ottawa fishing for smallies and fly fishing for smallies and pike, and and then we're it seemed like this fall our shows started to gravitate towards like muskie talk.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the commercial, even like the the gear guys, if there's any kind of guiding that's happening in Ottawa, it's definitely for muskie. So we're kind of like we're kind of blessed in that regard. But you've got carp, you have every type of trout, and even Ontario's got a saltwater coast. Which you kind of forget, which is like
forget about that.
James Bay and Hudson's Bay, and so you have like sea run brookies and char and stuff, and which is something that haven't done yet, but we'd love to do. We have gone up to the James Bay watershed before to fish for pike, but there's a lot to explore here, and there's not a whole aside from Toronto. It's a huge city,
and walleye.
But it's a sparsely populated province once you get far away from the
how
border.
far do you have to get outside of Toronto before it feels like you're remote?
That's a great question, actually.
Maybe, I mean, depending on the direction. If you're heading north, maybe like 4 hours.
Oh, 4 hours. Okay.
Yeah. That's where you start to get into like the wilderness. You hit like North Bay, and then everything north of North Bay is like there's one person, and he's beaver all the time. You know what I mean? And moose and
Can you drive? Is there a cutoff or can you drive north all the way?
You could drive north about 10 hours to Hearst, Ontario, and then it starts veering west, and it takes you out towards like Thunder Bay direction, which is like
towards
crazy
Manitoba.
Drive.
Yeah,
very long drive.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can go quite far north, and then from there you can hop on bush planes and fly to the ocean. So
yeah.
We actually this summer went to a lodge called Old Post Lodge, and Pickle Lake is where the airport is. That you and then you drive and boat into the lodge. But the lodge isn't on Pickle Lake, but Pickle Lake is the end of the road in Ontario.
Yeah, it used to be like the furthest you could drive.
It's the furthest you could drive.
Yeah. Now there's like a mining road or something that goes a little further. But it was like the end of the road.
But it's a great point, Dave. Like that is actually a lot of it quite accessible, and especially if you have a canoe, there are thousands of kilometers of interconnected waterways that you can explore and feel really remote. Pretty, like we said, pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it seems like the challenge I always find is, especially with the podcast, you got all these people you connect with, and every time I do a podcast, like, I want to go there. How do you guys balance that? Do you have that same challenge where all these people, like, how do you choose where you're going on a trip and all that stuff?
Man, that's a good question. Yeah, we always have that reaction.
Yeah,
we have like somebody on, we're like, let's go
there. We gotta go there.
Right.
I don't know. Like, how do we decide? I mean, I suppose it depends a little bit on opportunity. Sometimes we meet people that through the show that are like, really, really want to like host us. They're like, come stay at my house or something, and it's like, that sounds like it could be kind of fun, So sometimes these opportunities just kind of present themselves. But otherwise, yeah, Aldo and I have like a huge list of like every year we're like, maybe we'll go to Alaska this year, and then something else comes up, and we're like, well, let's just go do that. You know, like
right.
there's so many places to go.
I think the best way to answer that for me is like that example of what brought us to Texas the first time in red fishing. Mitch just happened. I think this was like years ago, and Mitch mentioned on a podcast, like, I really want to go catch a redfish. And one of our listeners was a guide in Rockport, Texas, and he emailed us right after he listened to the show and was like, "Come stay at my house."
Nice.
And we were like, "Okay," and we just flew. We flew ourselves down there, and he was so kind to host us and pull us around the flats, and they were awesome. And that was like, you know, something that, you know, we'll never forget. It was an amazing trip and an amazing fishery, and kind of both of our first real saltwater poling skiff experience. And yeah, it's a good question because it does come up, and we try to say yes as much as we can. That's definitely part of our brand. You know, and but it's cool. Like it's cool getting to, but you're right. It's like there's so much to do, and you keep meeting people, and especially after a podcast, you know this.
Oh yeah,
you're like, you're all fired up. This person's probably really stoked on their fishery, and so you get excited and you want to go see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I find that you resonate with some people even more, right? We had Chad Johnson on, you know, down in Arkansas, and I had him on, and it was just instantly after the episode, he blew us away with all the content. But then I kind of made a connection with him, and I was like, man, this guy seems like it'd be a lot of fun to fish with him, you know?
Yeah.
So that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Nice.
Yeah, some people you kind of just click with, you know, or they have like a similar style like of fishing that you're into, and yeah, I mean, there's just so many. I mean, that's the coolest thing about this podcast too, is we've met so many awesome. I mean, we say it all the time, like we've met so many cool people, like that guy Matt, the Texas Redfish guide. Like he ended up being like one of the nicest guys like I've ever met. You know, like, and we still talk to him on Instagram and stuff. Like,
right. What's his guide operation or his name?
He has recently,
He's recently stopped guiding. He moved the family to Dallas, but he spent a life guiding. You know, I think he actually might be younger than I am. I'm 38.
Yeah.
And I think he's more closer to Mitchie's age, or somewhere in between, like 35-ish.
Yeah.
But Matt was cool because he used to split his time from Ennis, Montana, trout guiding, and then spend the rest of his time down in Rockport, and then he did full-time Texas after leaving Montana. Yeah. And then I think he got a really great opportunity in Dallas. So he, you know, he got out the game, but he was great. And he took us, you know, he used to host trips in the Bahamas. We got to go to Andros with him. It was, that was like a really great, although we've met a lot of people.
Sounds like
we're not trying to rank the people that we met.
Matt's
but that's a really good example of like one of those things that really worked out. Like, randomly connected through the podcast. You know, we had a really great feeling and about, you know, spending some time with this person, and then it turned out being a really good friend.
Yeah, I find that's what I love about the podcast. That's one of the things I think you guys probably do too. It's like the connections, you know, that connection you make with the listeners and everybody and the guests, right? I mean, there's nothing, even YouTube. I mean, that's probably be a good question for you guys. Like, you're on YouTube, you're doing a lot of podcast content there, and on the non, you know, Apple Podcasts, that sort of stuff. Do you find that you're getting more engagement? Do you hear from the YouTube crowd more than you do from people maybe listening on audio only? Or can you even tell?
It's a good question. I don't know. Like we kind of have, I don't know. We can't really tell, but like, I feel like a lot more people are watching our YouTube because it's just like, why wouldn't I watch with video?
Yeah.
So yeah, probably people are migrating more to just the video portion of it.
Did you guys ever do it with audio only?
Oh yeah, a long time.
So when you did it audio only versus what do you find is the biggest difference of doing it? Do you find must be a little more challenging doing video because, you know, people are looking at you. You can't you can't be sitting there naked or anything like that, right? You gotta.
We still will, but it just gets flagged or not. I think it's maybe it's, I mean, the biggest thing honestly is just like the boring stuff. Like sometimes guests are like, I don't even have a computer, you know. It's like I can't do video, like, you know. You never know what kind of tech they're gonna have, but we work through it, and we've kind of figured it out and gotten into a good flow, and everybody's becoming more savvy with that stuff. So
I think with the advent of apps like this, Riverside or Zencaster, it's become easier, certainly. I
Mhm.
still, when we started, we had access to a studio at CBC, at the old CBC
Oh, wow.
network. CBC is the public broadcaster.
Yeah.
For if anybody doesn't know that's listening.
Sure.
And we did actually most of our audio only interviews in person.
Sick.
And we that's when
Wow.
the show was like super hyper, mainly Ontario guests. So
Yeah.
like Ontario guides, biologists, authors, anglers, but they would come. It was actually kind of cool. Like we hosted them downtown at the
Yeah.
studio, and they'd walk in and they'd be like, it made us look a lot
Legit.
bigger than we
Right.
were, because it's
Yeah, it
like
was so
there's like
legit.
a soundboard and
Oh yeah.
and
I
all
remember
this stuff.
seeing Rick Mercer in there one time, who's like a Canadian like broadcast legend. He was like,
Oh,
walking
really?
around, I'm like, what? This is crazy.
No kidding.
I kind
were
of miss doing that. Though.
I do. I 100% miss doing that. It was cool doing it in studio, but obviously this platform, I mean, we can reach
unlocks
anybody
the world.
Yeah.
everywhere, which
That's
is
why it's
amazing.
better. Yeah, that's why
Yeah.
it's better. I mean, I think the in person is the best if you could do that. But you know,
Totally.
this opens it up. Yeah, that's so. I'm not. You said Rick. Rick, was it Mercer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with him, but who have you guys had some other big name guests? I think of somebody. We've got one big name person coming up who's not even in the fly fishing space, Roy. That's coming on our show. But have you guys had any
Cool.
big name people you look back and like, oh, man, that was amazing. We had that person.
Big famous names.
Yeah.
We need to get. I know you've had Henry Winkler on.
Yeah.
You need to hook us up with Henry. Just send us his number. We'll call him.
Exactly. I'll give you. I talk to him every day. We're
Just connect
us.
us.
It's not that I was interviewing. Oh God, who was it? I'm trying to think now. It was one of our Steelhead episodes we did recently, and the guest basically was like, started talking. He's like, oh yeah, I know Tiger Woods and Mark O'Mara. I was like, what?
Whoa.
Wait. So you know Tiger Woods? He's like, oh yeah, I fly fish with Tiger Woods, many times.
What?
Yeah. So this guy that I had on, and I'm totally doing a brain fart here because I can't think of his name, but he was like, he's best friends with Mark O'Mara, who was was an amazing pro golfer, and so Mark O'Mara is, good friends with Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
And so Mark would always bring Tiger on all these trips. So he talked about some of these steelhead trips where he's fishing with Tiger. Anyways, so at the end I was like, hey, I would love to have Mark O'Mara on. So Mark's coming on the show.
Amazing.
Cool.
Oh, that's
because I'm
so
not a
cool.
master golfer, but I do golf. So it's kind of cool to have like a professional.
Oh, for
guy who's
sure.
running some tournaments, right?
Dude, 100%, man. That's so cool.
There was like a glimmer of hope again years ago, like early days, that Liam Neeson almost came on the show.
Yeah, we did get a rejection from him. The agent said, let me check, and a couple days later said he is politely declining, and I was like, that's pretty cool too.
That's right.
It was like a whole segment of the show.
It was like kind of almost happening, and then it didn't happen.
What was Liam? What was his? He's an actor, obviously. What's the movie he was in? Do you guys?
I mean, he was Qui-Gon
Star
Jinn
Wars.
in Star Wars.
Oh yeah, Star Wars.
Taken.
Yeah.
So many things.
But he
Schindler's
apparently
List.
fly fishes. He fly fishes too, so we were like, perfect.
That's been awesome.
But yeah, it'd be. It'd be sick to have a name like, I'd love to get like. It'd be so cool to talk to like a Jimmy Kimmel or like, like any of these guys would be awesome. Or Batman would be cool. He's a big fly angler.
I like that idea of like getting a very famous person like David Beckham fly fishes.
Oh yeah, Beckham.
Emma, Emma Watson. Get one of these people on. You don't talk about anything but the fishing.
You almost like make it seem like you don't know they're a famous actor.
Well, that's kind of the other. So when I had Henry, and I had another one that was I was really stoked, was the founder of Patagonia.
Amazing. Right? Yeah,
that was challenging. I was actually biting that was more challenging than Henry, but with Henry, it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to definitely talk fly fishing. But I mixed in some on his career because, I mean, how can you not?
How can you not?
The guy was like, I received 500,000 fan mail letters every week. And he told the story. I was like, what?
That's wild.
500,000 letters per week.
Crazy. That's so crazy.
That's wild.
So anyways, but let's go back to you guys. So tell me this. Talking about mail, have you guys ever received hate mail after a podcast episode? Like, has anybody ever called you up and basically just been like, you guys suck? This was like,
I think we've had a couple where people are like, you swear too much, and
Yeah.
you know, fair enough. We dialed that back a little bit. That was the early days.
Yeah.
But
So,
you know,
went hand in hand with the drinking again.
yeah, that's all slowed down. So like, if you're gonna listen to the show and you don't like swearing, just start at like 120. You know?
Right. So you guys don't swear at all anymore?
No, we swear, but we
Yeah.
definitely don't swear as much as we used to.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, other than that, we haven't too much. Like, I mean, you know, we get a lot of like comments on YouTube or Instagram or stuff like that. If people like, this is the way to do it or whatever, and it's like, yeah, fair enough, like whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, nobody like.
Yeah, we
this is the
haven't-
way to actually podcast, or what are they telling you?
Well, you know, like the internet's, you know, rife with trolls. Like, but we, you know, we don't really get that. We don't get trolled super hard. You know,
Yeah.
with some of our, you know, friends in the fly fishing space that are
Oh.
very active online. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
quite incredible what people.
Maybe
say
that's
to
a bad
people.
thing, you know. Maybe we need more hate.
Yeah.
Because it's like maybe nobody's listening,
Right.
nobody cares, you know. Like,
People are listening. I mean, the thing is, like at YouTube, I mean, you guys are getting plenty of engagement there. I mean,
Yeah.
and YouTube is known as kind of where the trolls live, right? I mean, I haven't really been on YouTube that much, so I don't see it, but
Right.
you hear that. Like YouTube's a place where you can get trolled pretty big.
Yeah, every once in a while we'll get one offhand comment, but nothing crazy. You know, we do get some actually constructive criticism from time to time, and those people like take the time to email you. So that's
Yeah.
like, I'm cool with that. Like, if you want to actually spend the time to email us and be like, you know what, I listen to you guys all the time. This episode was a bit of a miss, and here's why I think.
yeah,
I'm all here for that. You know,
yeah, for sure.
it's the random person that's like, you guys suck. And it's like, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
That's good.
Yeah.
No, I always feel like it's good to have that, right? You should, if you're getting some of those, even the bad reviews and stuff like that, it means you've kind of made it.
It's a good thing.
You want
Yeah.
some of that, right?
That's a good thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good. Yeah, that's for sure. Mhm.
Yeah. What is it as you look out? So you guys are looking out, like you said, up to 200. Are you planning your whole year? Or do you go episode by episode? How are you kind of finding your people? What's that look like?
Aldo.
I think we do. You know, it kind of ebbs and flows. I'm not sure what it's like for you, Dave, but you know, there are definitely quarters or months where we do a better job in terms of like, planning ahead. Sometimes it gets a little last minute, or sometimes people cancel because they're busy, or like Mitch said, the tech doesn't work out, and all of a sudden you're scrambling to put a show together because this person's Wi-Fi doesn't work, which is totally fine. But yeah, it's a lot of outreach. We definitely lean on our network too of like sponsors and fly shops and guides and people we know to get guests as well. And we want to be conscious of still, despite being more of a, I don't know if you could call us a global show, but something like that, you know, an international show. In terms of the guests we get, we try to want to still rep Ontario as much as we can and get people from Ontario and tell Ontario's story too, you know.
But we kind of like do it based on our interests for that year too. Like at the start of every year, we like get together and we kind of map out any goals or dreams we have, you know, or what we're into that. And I think like this year, like we saw like in the fall, we did a lot of musky stuff, and that's just because we were really into musky this fall and like learning more about getting into that world. So yeah, I think it's just like the cool thing about this is we kind of tailor it to what we're into, and then you know, obviously try to think about what other people would like to. But like, yeah, it kind of goes with like how we grow as anglers. It's interesting in that way. Like going back to the first episode, it's like just be cool to like plot out like how we've changed and what we've talked about, because it really is a reflection of just like our lives over the last decade. You know, like we've traveled, where we've gone, who we've met, and like.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It does ebb and flow, and then when it, like Aldo said, when it comes to like how do we plan, we've been doing a lot of batch recordings, trying to like get stuff in the bucket, because when people cancel, you're like, you know, like we still got to do a show, but
Right.
Plus, we, you know, this is not our full-time job, so we have a full-time job. I mean, it takes up a considerable amount of hours, as you know, more than anyone. No. But yeah, we, you know, like Mitch is a creative director, and you know, I'm on my own business, and yeah, we do this. I hesitate to say on the side, because it definitely doesn't feel really like it's on the side.
No,
but in tandem to our other professional lives. Yeah.
Right. And you guys are editing. Who does the editing?
Both of us.
You both
edit. Yeah, we kind of do it all. Yeah. Although when we do videos, Aldo shoots more. I don't really shoot that much, but I'm kind of just hanging around. But then, we edit.
What do you mean by
shoot
stuff when you do the videos?
Yeah, like actually operating the camera.
Okay. Yeah.
Like if we're to do like one of our like on location,
Gotcha. Sure.
like
Like a
trip
fishing
videos,
video
not
or
so much the
vlog.
podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mitch
Yeah.
definitely takes the bulk of the podcast edits, and I'll take the bulk of our like social media or YouTube video edits.
Yeah.
It's kind
Gotcha.
of like our division of labor right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 And what do you use for you to edit your YouTube, the video?
It's all Premiere Pro.
Premiere.
All
Yeah.
Premiere
Yeah.
Pro. Yeah.
The Adobe suite is definitely what
Oh.
we use most. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So you guys are, I mean, it feels like you guys you're in your groove. You got it dialed. As you look out, what do you think? What can people expect looking into 25? This is a good time because right now this is probably going to go live early January 25.
Okay.
How does this year look for you guys? Are you excited about anything coming up here? Trips, new podcasts?
Oh, yeah.
videos? Yeah.
Big time. Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
I
heading
mean-
to all the-
Sorry. No, please
Okay.
go ahead.
Oh my God, please. We're going to Belize.
Oh wow.
Yeah, really soon. If you're listening to
Holy
this, so
cow.
we're stoked. Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it'll be a February trip for us, and that'll be great. We're going with a bunch of pals. We're
Wow.
DIYing, but also we have some guides booked. This will be my third time to Belize.
My first.
Amazing.
But I went last year, and it was just so much fun. And we're going
Yeah.
back to Ambergris Key and
Uh-huh.
San Pedro and stuff. And so
Amazing.
I'm really excited
Yeah.
to show these guys.
And-
I'm really excited for episode 200, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a huge milestone. I think
Yeah.
that's really, really cool. And
Huge.
I think there was a lot of changes in 2024. Like we're saying, like our third partner Yilma left the show. Not for any bad reasons, just
No.
it's been 8 years.
He just left in earlier
Yeah.
this year.
January.
Yeah.
January, okay. Yeah.
And we did a little mini rebrand. So I think like 2024, although it was exciting. We got to do some really cool stuff. Like we went to some really great northern lodges. We fished a bunch around here. We threw a bunch of events. But it was a rebuilding year for sure. Like I said, we did a rebrand. We've been trying to clean up the back end in terms of our SEO and discoverability on YouTube. Same thing with Spotify. So it's been a lot of that. So we're kind of excited, or at least I am, to just execute, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like let's, record podcasts. Let's think about the stories we want to tell and just keep building. We've amassed quite a great group of friends that are really talented photographers and videographers and stuff that join us on trips. Some of them fly fish, some of them don't. And, it's just cool doing projects with other creatives too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what I'm stoked for 2025. Just,
And of course, our annual Southern Ontario Trout Opener Social, which is a party we do in Toronto. Get ready for that. It's
Dave,
coming
you
in
should come.
April.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when's
come on
that?
down.
Is that April, May?
yeah,
It's
April,
April, yeah.
It's the week before Trout Opener. And we
Okay.
do a
So,
big
like the
Trout
third.
Unlimited fundraiser.
Oh, you
It's a
do?
cocktail party.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's so fun. It's so
Yeah.
fun, man.
So
And
what does
we-
that look like? What are you guys doing? Are you meeting out at like a place? Or are you on the water? What are you doing?
Yeah, we have like a cocktail bar we set up at.
It's an event space, about 150 people. And
Have some wicked cocktails going. We've got tying competitions.
we have
and
the
we've got-
Great Squirmy Wormy Derby, Dave.
Oh, wow.
So whoever ties the
Sounds amazing.
fastest squirmy gets a day on the water with one of the guides in the
No
the area.
kidding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's really cool. Where did this idea? Have you guys been doing this a while?
this will be our 4th year doing
Okay.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
4th year, yeah.
It was Mitch's idea. He's like, we should just throw a party for trout, and we were like, yes.
and like one of the rivers we love and everybody knows of, and it's near Toronto, needs help because it's up against everything, and so it was like a way to raise money for that, which has been great. We've been able to do that just to help fuel the efforts that are trying to protect and save the river.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know. I was like, it'd be so sick if you're in Toronto, and you like fishing, you hear about some party to celebrate trout. I was like, I'd love to go to that. So it's like, and then we just found the way to make it happen, and and that was it.
Wow. And 4 years now. And
4
what
years.
is that? Would you have a tip for somebody who wants to put on an event like that? It sounds like that's a lot of funding, right? Fundraising, all that stuff. Was that something you guys had a background in?
I definitely definitely for event throwing. That's definitely something, part of my wheelhouse for sure from hospitality. We actually did, talking about feedback, somebody did reach out to us and was like, we heard about this Sotos party and we did, so I think they were in Colorado and they're like, we did kind of the same thing. Because our idea was part of the reason we wanted to make it a cocktail party is we wanted we obviously knew we could draw a fishing crowd, we wanted a non-fishing crowd too. Or if you had like, you know, a brother, sister, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, you know, that they could come and be interested in this too.
Yeah,
So we've got like you know, we've got like the event space is perfect because it's like a big bar area, but then there's a huge open space in the back where all the like the booths get set up. So like the Clean Water Initiative people, like Ontario Streams set up back there, the fly shops back there. So if you want to engage in the super fly fishy stuff, it's there for you. If you want to just hang out at the bar and have a drink and chit chat and meet people, that's there for you. And so, yeah, my advice would just be like, yeah, you know, try to, if there's a way to make it. I think, you know,
or general.
I never went to one, but you know, I watched the Fly Lords like fly shop tour stuff, and sometimes they have those happy hours, and it looks like that's what's happening at these fly shops too. And so I think like something like that just kind of, you know, we all, as humans, whether you fish or not, we like hanging out and have a good time. So yeah, you don't have to overthink it. So just like see how you can, you know, facilitate a good time then.
And shout out to like Nick Kennedy, Civil Liberties, third place. That's where we do it. Who donates the space because it's a fundraiser. So it's like, you know, if you're in your area, could go to a brewery or whatever, and just be like, hey, can I do? I'm sure they would say yes. You're just bringing them business, right? So it's like, yeah, there's so many ways. Just if you want to make it happen, just make it happen. You can figure out ways to do it.
I find when you always attach yourself to a charity, people are willing to like.
Yeah,
you know,
help more.
Our sponsors definitely, you know, we throw a massive raffle, and our sponsors like Reddington and Chums and Costa and stuff, they're always like, yeah, you know, give us a bunch of stuff. So, because the idea is that every dollar that we, like everything we sell at this party, goes right to the river. We don't like keep anything, and like the less that we actually have to pay for, like the event space, for example, you know, the more that gets that. You know, that's the more that Trout Unlimited sees.
Amazing. This is
cool. Well, yeah, that's 2025. We're pretty stoked for that.
That sounds awesome. What else you guys got coming? Looking out at 25? Any episode wise? You got any guests that are on your radar? You're thinking about you haven't had on yet?
Ooh. I would love to get Andy Mill on the show. I've been listening to a lot. Again, Mitch mentioned I'm really kind of saltwater crazed these past 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And I've been consuming his podcast constantly.
Yeah.
And I just think he's a cool dude.
Yeah. This podcast is the Millhouse podcast.
The Millhouse podcast, yeah.
What do you love about the Millhouse podcast?
It's a great question. I think part of it is this like Floridian mystique of like an air, like if you ever watched the, you know, film Tarpon.
Oh yeah.
You know, 1967. There's this like Hemingway-esque, you know, aura around the Keys that, you know, I think lives on in some of these people like Andy Mill and certainly Flip Pallett and you know, Tom McGuane and all these people and because I didn't grow up in that or live through that, it just makes me so interested. I've traveled to the Keys prior to even wetting a line there, you know, and it just like it's such an interesting place. Like, you know, Key West is such an interesting place, and Isla Morada and all that stuff. And yeah, it's a lot of history there. It's really interesting. And I when he has people on the show, you know, and they just start talking about that, you know, that area. It's just really interesting. I mean,
it is. What is the name of that thing that there was a book written about it, right? The collapse of the Tarpon and that whole thing.
The Homo Sasa.
Yeah, that whole thing. And
Lords of the Fly.
Again, I'm terrible today because I'm drawing a blank, but we had the author who wrote that book on. He told the story. About
Andy
Monty
Burke.
Exactly,
Monty Burke. Yeah.
He's the man.
Right, which is crazy, but yeah, it is an interesting story. Is that what you're saying, Mitch? You're thinking? Are you on the same thing? Is that what? Do you have podcasts that you also listen to? Other podcasts?
Yeah, I have a bunch that I like listen to that aren't fly fishing related, but Andy would be really cool. I think there's just something in like people. There's something about going to a place where you know there's like a storied past, and like when we all fished Florida Bay. And Benny, the guide, was like, who's a legit, I'd love to have him on the show. But like, you know, he's like, this is where saltwater fly fishing originated. It suddenly makes fishing there so much more special because you're like, oh, okay, I'm fishing in a place that's like there's a like a vibe, a feeling here. And I think the same is said for like having someone like Andy on the show would be so cool because he's just spent so much time on the water doing something that we are kind of like interested in, and it's a like the whole salt fly thing is so different from what we grew up in. So I think talking to people like that is so special and unique, but there's also this weird pressure with it because you're like, damn, am I getting everything I want out of this interview? Am I asking the right questions? So it's like,
No.
I love doing those shows. They can also be really nerve wracking, but I'd love to have Andy Mill on, and I think that'd be something cool.
Especially when you have to pack it into an hour, it's it's tough,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
There's also like although we've been talking about stripers for a long time, striped bass, and I think that we got to figure out stripers this year coming up.
Yeah, you guys aren't far. You got killer striper fishing, right?
Yeah, and it's like that's been on the list since I started fly fishing when I was like 13. I read that book On the Run. I'd love to have that guy on the show, but he won't get back to us. But if you're listening, please. Monty Burke's actually friends with him, and he's like, I could get on. I'd love to talk to him.
Yeah,
there's also this other guy, Peter. His last name is Kaminsky. He wrote a book recently, and he also wrote a book about striped bass that I'm reading right now, which has the coolest title. It's called "The Moon Pulled Up an Acre of Bass," which I'm like, what a great name for a book about stripers. So I'm reading that, and I'd love to talk to him. And he had a book recently out last year. I think that was making headlines. But so some authors. Andy would be great, But then I think we just got to go striper fishing. I think I think we got to do that a bunch.
Yeah, you got to get out there and do it. Exactly. Well, it sounds like the Belize is on your guys' radar. What was it like going to Belize for that first time? I mean, maybe was it different that you've been there a couple times now, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Talk about that for somebody who hasn't really done the saltwater thing. Why would they want to do that when they love freshwater and trout and all that stuff?
For sure. I think. Well, first, we have a lot. We've had people on the show like Mario from Taco Fly and Eland Stribling. Comedians on the fly. They always go down to they go down there a lot, obviously. And I was like, why? I wonder what the draw is. So I found myself there, and the accessibility is amazing. Like, in terms of a DIY perspective, there are some fantastic lodges and guides on the island. And, so you fly into Belize. So Belize, there's you fly into Belize City, which is the main, on the mainland. You take a small commuter plane out to, various places in Belize. But we're talking specifically about Ambergris Key, which is the town is called San Pedro. Yeah. And it actually has, bordering Mexico. Yeah. Right. And there's a channel which our guide took us through, which is barely wider than the boat that we were in. And, one side of the mangroves is Belize, the other side's Mexico, and you're not far from Ishkalak, which of course is allegedly the permit capital of the world. And, or at least they say it is. Right. And then, but I just thought the accessibility was really interesting. I mean, if you're, if it's not, being a traveling angler is not a budget friendly thing, even when you're doing it in a budget friendly way. All of a sudden you're flipping out all your gear. You don't have saltwater lines. Maybe you don't have 8 weights. Maybe you don't have 10 weights. But the cool thing about Belize, at least, is if you wanted to, you could do it pretty much on the cheap. Like I went with a bunch of the guys from the fly shop here, and the first 3 nights we just stayed in a hostel, and I think our room was like $80 a night.
No kidding.
And amazing. We say this all the time on our show too. We are very lucky in Toronto in that like there are direct flights to everywhere, so it makes it really maybe skewed in terms of affordability. So I think my plane ticket was $400 Canadian.
No kidding.
And then
that's like $250 US.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and then the commuter plane was like 180 American. So crazy. You're well under $700 Canadian anyway. And then we were like $80 a night at the hostel. We ended up going to we had an Airbnb as well, but you could stay at the hostel the whole time. And then if you never got a guide, you just need it's a golf cart island. You just rent a golf cart.
Do you think somebody can go down there without a guide and have good success or have some success?
I think you could definitely run into bonefish for sure.
Yeah.
I think
Permit's a different deal.
maybe permits a different deal. Still accessible from the beach. Like you don't need. The second largest barrier reef in the world is in Belize, and a lot of that reef breaks on the eastern side of the Ambergris Key. And so what happens is you get this amazing beachside flat that runs almost the whole length of the island. And depending on the tide, you do have you can catch per permit on the beach essentially. You can certainly access the flats right from the beach, which is great. Because you don't even need any kind of watercraft. So in that regard, I think yes, you could probably have more success in other places. Like someone was asking if they can DIY Andros. I'm like, you could, but it'd be way harder.
Well, it would.
Yeah.
Because you have to boat around.
You have to boat to some of these flats or, but I think that's why Belize was so great, was just like, you fly there. The other thing that I wasn't expecting, just being so close to Mexico, I was expecting everything to be Spanish, but it's a former British colony. Everything's English. Everything's English. The money has a queen on it. It's like,
what?
Right.
Not really. Everyone's speaking English, but they also kind of speak Spanish, but they also kind of speak like, this kind of like hybrid of all three of those languages.
Oh, wow.
It's like really interesting.
God, that's so cool.
It's an adventure, right? Like,
yeah.
Has that been the place where you guys have traveled? Is that kind of top on the kind of adventure list for you, or do you have other places you've been to, or do you have any crazy stories from any of your travels that you guys have been on? Or I'm sure you've had a few on the podcast. That's always a tough question, right? Come up with the story on the spot, but anything come to your mind?
We always do that to our guests.
I know.
I feel bad. I'm like, oh, that is hard.
Give me your greatest story right now.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't know. My favorite place has been like I haven't been to Belize yet. Aldo's gone without me. Aldo.
So I'm bringing you, man.
But it's gonna be sick. I can't wait. But Montana was awesome. Florida was great. I loved fish in Texas, obviously. But my favorite trip so far still is one of our first trips, which was Northern Ontario on the Ottawapiskat River, which is a river that flows out of like the James Bay kind of region.
Okay.
And it was just such a unique trip because I'd always wanted to go really far north in Ontario. And then when we got to do it, I realized how hardcore it actually is up there. Like it really is like tundra-y up there, and you go far enough and you start seeing polar bears type of thing.
Wow.
So it's like, wow, okay. So that was awesome. And obviously we're catching so many big fish, walleye and pike. And our guide was this indigenous fella who was super cool. And he had great stories. My favorite story from that trip was probably, so Yilma, the third host, was really scared of bears. And one night and we're in the middle of nowhere, right? Like it's a 2-hour float plane from Hearst, which is a 10-hour drive north of Toronto. And then, like we're there for like over a week and I think 10 days or something in this little cabin with, and you look at the woods, you look north, you're just like, wow, there's nothing, and then you just hit the ocean eventually. We saw the northern lights and stuff.
Oh, wow.
Really in the middle of nowhere. God. And Yilma's scared of bears, like so scared of bears. And Norm was like telling us a story. He's like, one time I was up here sleeping in the middle of the night and I just hear voomp and his door busts open and a bear walks into his cabin. And Norm's like, oh man, and he grabs his shotgun and he shoots the bear in the butt and the bear runs off. And Yilma's just like, I look at Yilma and he's just like so scared. He's just like frozen in fear.
So this is the guy that was hosting you on the trip?
Yeah, he was the guide. He would spend like his whole summer and a bit of fall up there, and he wouldn't leave really. And people would just come, and there'd
Tim
be
and his brother's
weeks.
land.
Yeah, his brother was up there for a long time too. Unfortunately, passed away like the year before. But he would just spend weeks up, and sometimes he'd be by himself for weeks, And he had really cool stories. I mean, all kinds of stuff, like mysterious sort of things that happened when he was by himself. But the bear thing, I was just like, man, this is so perfect. Wow. I'm like. He almost scared, and there was claw marks on the door.
Yeah, wow.
He almost like, oh my god.
Yeah, I think that's such a good trip to pick because it was like kind of our first big adventure, and it was it ticked a lot of firsts. We've never been on a float plane before,
right?
Never been that far north in Ontario, never seen tundra before.
Yeah,
there were wolves at our camp.
Oh my!
Pretty much every day.
No kidding.
Not in a dangerous way. They just
you could just hear them or see them too.
Oh, we saw
See
them.
'em.
They were just like on the
Good.
other side of the river, just waiting for us to like clean fish, essentially.
Wow. God, that's
Yeah.
great.
You know,
They're the best.
and you know these
And
pike we were
moose,
catching were crazy. Moose, like it was
caribou,
just
or caribou up there too.
I think they have some caribou up
They're up
there.
there.
I know that there's been at Esnagami Lake, which is sort of a similar. It's just a little souther, but yeah.
it would be wood. There's two types of caribou. This would be woodland caribou, which are
woodlands.
much more endangered, smaller, and they don't herd like the Arctic caribou do. In the same way. So if you ever see a woodland caribou, you're extraordinarily
Very
lucky.
lucky.
Human.
Okay, didn't even
Yeah.
realize that. So there's multiple species of caribou.
Yes, yeah. But if you do see a wood, there, it's possible that we could have saw one. We didn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you do see one, it's like
Yeah.
you consider yourself pretty lucky.
Oh man, just seeing the wolves, I was like, this
Yeah,
is
the
so
wolves.
And
wow,
everything's
so cool.
bigger up there. Aside from the trees, everything's bigger
Wolves are
up there.
gigantic, right? They're huge.
Oh, the bulls
yeah.
are huge. The loons were huge. The eagles were huge. It was, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's, and it just like solidified. Like we're like, okay, this is, well, for me anyway. Sorry, I don't want to speak for you, Mitch. It was just like, I really fell in love with the land at that point. I was like really taken aback
Yeah.
by Ontario's like natural beauty.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, you guys have a unique thing because of where you know down the lower in the States. I mean, there's just so many people, right? It's hard to find those really remote places. I mean, I think our biggest wilderness area is like 2 million acres in Idaho, you know, and that's 2 million. I mean, you guys probably have 2 million acres. I mean, I'm not sure, but it's gigantic, right? I mean, that's
Huge.
most of your province is wild area, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah.
Roadless,
Once
wild.
you get north of, once you get north of like I said, North Bay, like you start really getting into like, it's just trees, like for
Still
forever.
old growth, it's really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. Nice. Well, I was going to start to take it out of here. Obviously, we could always, these are always a challenge for me too, of the talking. How do you guys do that on yours? So when you've got a guest that's talking, do you have like a time where you're thinking, well, I'll start to cut it off, or do you just talk as long as you want to talk?
We start cutting off the show like 45 minutes in because we have 5 questions we ask every guest at the end of the show, which really helps kind of round things out.
Yeah.
So yeah, but
That helps.
We've definitely become in the last year more focused in terms of like what we
Trying
want our
to be.
topic to be. Whereas like before it was like a little bit more generic. Now it's like, oh, we're having this person on for this
For a
specific
specific-
reason. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're trying to
get a bunch of stuff out in the intro, and then try to make the, if somebody's listening, we want it to be the best piece of content it can be, what we would want to listen to. So constantly trying to improve that. Like it's an ongoing thing, but. If you listen to one of our episodes from like 70 or 60 or 50 and you're like, that sucks. It's like, try 170 and, trust me, it'll be better. I hope.
Right.
Just give us another chance.
Yeah, right.
Actually, I had this question for you, Dave. Do you ever struggle with keeping your back catalog on, like, in the world? It's not that you're not proud of it, but like Mitch said, it's like,
keep it going, or you mean just like?
oh, just like if somebody finds the SoFly podcast and they listen to episode 1, I don't know if they're going to listen to the SoFly podcast.
No, I actually I kind of look at it more like I think it's cool to just let people go look at it, because I remember when I was starting out the same thing.
Yeah.
And I've learned from a lot of people, podcasting, business, all this stuff, and I feel like just transparency is really cool. And the first guy I ever learned from was Pat Flynn, Smart Passive Income, right? He was my first online mentor guy, and he's just a super transparent guy. He like did his income report on his website back in the day, and that's how I learned about online business, was from this guy. It wasn't spammy. It wasn't a guy trying to take your money. It was this really. So I always feel like being open about that, and then that way, because I want more podcasts, you know what I mean? Like, so if somebody's new, I just say, hey, we all started from square one. First episode was terrible. And you go listen to mine, and now you can see where we are, right? So I feel like that's my take.
Yeah,
that's ours too. I'm just curious because there are some times where you're like,
I know.
But then you're like, whatever.
It is what it is,
It is
Like
what
we
it-
did this thing,
it-
we put it out, and that's what it is. Like
we
take it or
wouldn't
leave
be
it. I don't
here
care.
if we weren't there.
It is cool. Well, I was going to start in our own little takeout segment here. I was just thinking, one question I love to ask is about podcasts, and I'm looking at one now. I'm going to give my favorite, or new podcast I have, and maybe you guys think about one here. So and this is the way a lot of people learn about our podcast, right? Word of mouth. Still to this day, right? So somebody told me about this podcast called The Knowledge Project. And this guy, episode 202, I just started listening to it, but it sounds great. Matthew Dix. And he's a storytelling expert. So if anybody wants a little feedback on telling a good story, and I was just listening to a little about how to tell a good story. and there is some. I feel like podcasts work so well because you just have to be curious. The story comes out in your curiosity. But when you guys are telling, well, first off, let's start with the podcast. So we'll talk storytellers. So do you guys have a podcast? Another one you want to give a shout out to that you love listening to, that's in your feed right now? That's maybe one you
Yeah,
listen to?
absolutely. My favorite podcast for a long time has been Design Matters with Debbie Millman.
Oh, yeah,
She's a
I've heard of that.
great interviewer. She just has this like pacing about how she talks to people that I really appreciate, because she pushes the conversation forward. She remains curious, but it's almost like when they're done with something, they just move on very easily. Like, I don't know, there's just like, she's just done some great episodes with people and some interviews on there that are just, I just love, the conversation. I think that's the great thing about podcast is like, it can be really obviously great, inspiring conversation. And for myself, when I'm driving a car or something like that, it just sucks me in, and you do leave feeling inspired. And I think Debbie's show does that for me pretty much every time. So shout out to Debbie.
There you
She
go.
also did the original Burger King logo, and it's so much better than the new one. So
Right, there you go. Awesome. All right, I'll check out that one for sure. Aldo, how about you?
I've been a fan of Pivot for a long time, with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. It's a, you could, the name is like, oh, they must have started it during the pandemic. They didn't. Just Pivot
Right.
became a word that we all, ubiquitously used. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a look on business and tech and how tech changes, business and not just business, but like our everyday life and world and stuff. And I always find them really engaging because they're not, I don't find that they're talking down to anybody. And even if I don't particularly grasp a subject, I feel like by the end of it, I kind of know what's going on, at least enough to want to go look into it, which I think is also makes for a really great podcaster. If they've piqued your interest enough that you want to follow up on your own, I think that's a big win for a host. If they're like, wow, that little bit of whatever I just listened to was really interesting, I'm going to now go look into this. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that. I mean, I think we're in the same ballpark. Obviously, you guys love the podcasting. What is it about the podcast? You've got the guests. Is there? I mean, we haven't gone into your backstory. Maybe we could follow up with you guys at a later point on that. But what was it that got you? Where did it come from? Where did this idea going back 2015, 2014? Where did this idea come from?
So the first podcast I ever listened to was the Ricky Gervais Show.
Oh yeah,
with Carl Pilkington and Stephen Merchant.
Yeah,
and it still is one of the best
still
podcasts.
Still going?
No. It ended a long time ago. But like, I will go and listen to those episodes to this day and like crack up or quote it to my buddies. Like, it was just such a good podcast because it had such a good idea and it was hilarious, obviously. So I always wanted to do, and I always loved radio. I think radio was really. I used to listen to like CFRA, which was like our AM radio in Toronto or in Ottawa growing up, and just listen to people blabbing on about whatever.
yeah.
There's just something kind of like nice, and I think that's partly why I miss doing the shows in person in kind of a dimly lit room where you can create this kind of vibe that is like. You break down kind of walls and you sort of say like, let's just cut all the BS and talk like people and have in conversations sometimes that are a bit magical. It's kind of the same reason I got into cocktails, to be honest. Like, you can sit down with someone and have a cocktail or two and have the best conversation ever and leave feeling really good about yourself, And some podcasts do that for me. And I think hosting is the same. Like, we do some shows where I'm just like that.
Yeah.
Whether people listen, doesn't matter. Like, for me, that was really gave me something that just felt really good. And I want to do more of that. I want to listen to more of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it started just from that kind of, I like talking to people. And I think conversation can be really fun and inspiring. And at the time, when we started SoFly, it was like, what should we do kind of thing. And it was like, well, this is the perfect timing, because we just had like this band of personalities, Yilma, Aldo, very, very great personalities, kind of putting a microphone in front of and just like see what happens, So yeah, but I would credit it all to the Ricky Gervais Show. What a great podcast.
Check that one out too.
There you go.
Yeah, so good.
Right on. And then quickly on. So the name, the SoFly, is for those that don't know what that name. What does SoFly mean? What is that to you guys?
Yeah, that was like Yilma actually had that idea, and he sent me a text when we were trying to think of a name, and we met up at a Irish pub, McVeigh's here in Toronto. He's like SoFly. I'm like, that's so sick.
Yeah.
And obviously, SO also means Southern Ontario, which is where we're from. So it's
yeah.
a bit of
Cool.
kind of worked on a bunch of things, but I think it was just fun. It felt like more approachable, and like we weren't trying to take ourselves too seriously, but like
Like
we
I'm
were
so
trying to.
fly, like you're so fly.
Yeah, so fly, like
I
just
think
having fun with it.
that's the other thing too. Like, well, maybe dating ourselves with a name like that because it's like, oh, we'll listen to '90s hip hop.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
And it just sounded,
Right. Which was a good time, right?
Yeah.
What was your '90s hip hop? You got one. Who's the band, the person that you're?
It's pretty nerdy, but MF Doom.
MF Doom.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Oh, see, I don't even know. This is awesome. I don't even know MF Doom.
Yeah, pretty nerdy.
Okay.
Music kid answer,
Doom
but yeah,
rocks.
probably MF Doom. Yeah.
Yeah. Right on. Good. Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'll take it out of here. We have our sponsor shout out, our travel. This is how I take it out of here. Today,
Oh, right
we're
on.
talking a lot about
Yeah.
trips, so you guys get a front row seat to a little ad read, right? An ad read. So,
I like it.
shout out first. I make these easy. Fishhound Expeditions. So we've been doing these trips with Fishhound for a while now, and the cool thing is actually this is kind of a double shout out because we're doing a trip with my family. We've got a new 4-wheel pop up camper. So if you guys have seen these things on the back of the pickup, the thing pops up 3 feet, so you can sleep. It's a king size bed on top,
sweet.
right?
So can we talk during this?
What's that?
Can we talk during this?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, you like
That's
that?
cool.
Yeah,
that
that's a
sounds
great
really
idea.
cool.
I have a
doing
pickup.
double shout here because it's going to be pretty cool. We've already done a travel, but Alaska is just this. It's not quite Ontario. It's not like talking about what we did driving up to northern to Hudson's Bay, but Alaska is pretty remote, especially when you're out there. But so we're going to travel up from Oregon. We're going to be out there, I don't know, a week or two on the road, sleeping in the camper with the bugs.
Oh man, awesome.
Yeah, so we just got this epic trip. So I want to give a shout out to Fishhound because we're actually going up to Anchorage and then we're going to fish Alaska by road because a lot of people think of Alaska like you have to fly out, but actually there's a lot of great water right off the road system. So we're going to have
amazing.
We got about 6 people coming up to meet up with us, and we're going to fish with Fishhound and the road system. And actually, the biggest Alaska trout I've ever caught was off at Willow Creek in the road system. So there's our shout out. That's our podcast ad read. First of all, you guys, what do you think? Is that a random enough for you on that podcast? Do you think that did justice to anything?
I like that. Yeah.
No, it's great. I mean,
Got me
I would
stoked.
love to go to Alaska. Yeah, I have a pickup truck. I would love that thing.
Yeah. So the 4-wheel camper. So this is here. This is my shout out to them because this is unbelievable. At 1972, they were founded, right? So they've been around forever. You see a lot of people, a lot of companies with similar things, but this is how tough the thing is. I don't recommend this, by the way, but the way it works is when you're inside, it only takes like 2 minutes to pull down. You go inside, you pull a lever, and it drops the whole thing down. And now you can drive like a normal truck, right? Like kind of like you have a canopy on. And on the outside, but the thing is, it's got these 5 latches or 6. You got to latch all these on the outside, right? Because that keeps it latched down. So we're out coming back from a trip about a month ago, driving down the highway, cruising, just, the family, we're all cruising. All of a sudden I'm like, oh shit. I left the top unlatched.
Oh my god!
And I was going like 65. And so I pulled over, and I'm just expecting the thing to be tore up.
Of course, yeah.
My investment, right?
Yeah.
I get out, and I'm like, oh, it looks like nothing's wrong. And so I went inside. Oh, it looks pretty normal. Popped it down, latched it up, and went in. And then later, I actually interviewed the guy who works for 4-wheel camper, and I asked him the question what would happen, just hypothetically, if somebody was to forget to latch their thing and the thing pops up, is this damage that's going to be terrible? And he's like, not a big deal at all. People do it all the time. The engineering's so good on this thing that you could literally drive 75 miles an hour with the thing. They don't recommend it, obviously, but so it's like this badass camper that pretty much is kind of indestructible sort of thing. So that's my shout out to 4-wheel camper. We're loud because I love getting out with the family, but like my kids, they get eaten by bugs, so I need something that keeps us protected.
For sure.
The other cool thing is you're on top of the pickup, so bears, whatever you're worried about, people, they're all down below you. You're kind of up in this little world. So, anyways, that's kind of my take on it. So, Aldo, I will say it's a badass thing because I've done sleeping in the back of the camper and the pickup.
Yeah.
But when you get to my age, which you guys, I got about 10 years on you. I'm getting close to 50. When you get to my age, the back starts to really love the softer materials. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Right there.
Yeah.
That's me. So, anyways, there's our double shout out this week.
That's
for
sick.
me. So here's the
I love
random stuff for you guys. I want to take it away to a couple random ones. So
Yeah.
YouTube, I'm not on a lot. I find when I get on YouTube, sometimes in YouTube and these algorithms are so good, they just give you stuff that they know you need. And when you guys go down the rabbit hole on YouTube, Mitch, let's start with you. I don't know if you do, but where's the rabbit hole? What are you going down? What gets you sucked in?
Like 10-hour like ambient videos.
Really?
Yeah, it's just like all of my For You videos are just like right now it's just Christmas, like 10-hour like ambient Christmas jazz.
Yeah.
But I
So this is
constantly
like
have
this
that
thing
stuff
with,
on.
like on the screen, the video is actually like stars and little wavy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's the best.
That's
and if you're not on the YouTube ambient train, like you're welcome because you can put on your TV. It's the best. But apart from that, you know, I got into this like rabbit hole of like people, the whole camping thing, like people, you know, camping out and like survival dudes and like this kind of thing. And I found a bunch of channels that I watched for a long time. One guy was I watched him for a while and I just found him in the For You page and he blew up. Camping with Steve. He just like camps behind like Home Depots and stuff. He calls it stealth camping. And it was like the best thing ever.
Totally
but he was
illegal, right? Totally illegal.
Totally illegal, yeah. But he's like
doesn't he
hiding
camp in like in a roundabout in like London at one point, like in a bush.
Yeah,
So
in a bush.
I mean, we have those around our place too. We call them homeless people.
Yes, exactly. It's basically that. It's the best thing ever. But he's like the nicest dude and like he's like camping should be equitable. Everyone should camp. I'm like, heck yeah, brother, you know. So he was great. And then it got into like, you know, by the end of it, it was like people like, you know, basically wrestling grizzly bears and like with GoPros on their heads, like, you know, the craziest like outdoor stuff, or building like snow shelters like that were like 20 feet tall. It was like, and I'm just like laying there like heaters on me, like, but YouTube's great for that kind of stuff, finding like the weirdest people doing stuff, and it's pretty entertaining.
It is. Nice. All right. Aldo, how about you? What's your rabbit hole?
It's not too different. It starts with like backcountry canoe camping. Again, like much to Mitch's like nod to Mitch here, like these videos that these people put together are sometimes like upwards of 4 hours long.
Yeah.
And because I canoe camp, maybe I like them. But they're just like, it's pretty mundane. Like if you've ever been on a canoe trip, it's amazing. It's restorative. It's like, you know, very zen.
Right.
But it's pretty mundane. You know, you're like paddling in the lake and then you walk with the canoe a bit and then you just set up camp.
Yep.
You know, a tent, you're cooking dinner. But some people are, you know, more entertaining than others and some are a little more introspective than others. But yeah, kind of start there. I love Jim Baird is really funny if you ever hear of Jim Baird. He also does fly fish from time to time on his... but he does the craziest stuff. Like one time he just walked across Baffin Island with his dog. He just went to the Arctic
hardcore.
Circle and he was like, we're just going to walk for 20 days.
And he does it.
And he
It's
did.
Like, what?
And you're
He
like,
films
what?
it, puts it on YouTube.
Him and his brother won alone. Like he's, you know, he's definitely, you know, he's not just a regular guy. Like he has obviously a extensive wilderness experience. So, but it is funny how he just thinks this stuff up and he does them. What I love about Jim is, at least in the beginning, he wasn't sponsored or anything. So he's just out there in like, you know, rubber boots and like, you know, stuff you buy at Walmart. And it's like, and I thought that was really cool about him because it was like accessible. So then that starts the rabbit hole. And then recently I'm watching this series called The World's Most Dangerous Highways.
Oh, yeah.
And they just, I don't know how I might, first of all, I would love to be the camera operator for these.
Right.
They just like send a pretty, like, not a series, like, well, I mean, it's a serious, like, endeavor, but like, it's just, they send this, like, probably like this one camera dude and a producer, and they're like, just like following the most random people in their cars in like the Andes Mountains while they go and like buy rice. And it takes them like 3 days to go buy rice because they have to drive these insane roads. And they're just there with them.
Yeah.
So then that just kind of, and then, so now I'm like, world's most dangerous or like insane highways, trains and boats. That's kind of my...
Oh, the boat launch fails? Man,
my rabbit hole right now is just all that. And you're like, these places exist?
The camping ones where people don't say anything and it's just like nature noises, man, that stuff is the best. You can just like fall asleep to that. It's
Right.
so good.
I do fall asleep to that. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
just paddle strokes, and you're
Oh
like,
man, that's so
Yeah.
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I got so that's going to be hard to beat, but I was kind of just curious as we were taking it out of here. What's your podcast app when you guys are listening to podcasts? Do you listen on like Spotify, Apple, other podcasts? What do you listen to?
I listen to on Spotify.
Same.
Yeah,
But
me
I know
too.
a lot of people like Apple, but
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
Spotify.
I like
No
Spotify because
qualms.
well, I guess Apple has music too. They have the music too. I just find Spotify is
Catch all.
seems pretty easy. Nice.
Yeah.
And what about the politics, religion? Those seem to be the two. Conservation. Are there any topics you guys try to steer clear of? Is that kind of like a guide trip, right? You don't talk about politics, religion. Have you ever had anything pop up on the podcast that you kind of got into a deep conversation about some random stuff?
I don't think we
so.
have, which is good because we'd. Hey, like if people want to talk about whatever, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But
You let them talk. Do you just let your guests talk? I mean, if they're on a subject, like sometimes there's probably the fact checking thing, right? Like, what if somebody said? And actually, we had this happen to us recently. I interviewed Jen Ripple, the Dunn magazine editor, I interviewed Heather Hodson, who was talking about a totally different subject, but she brought up the Dunn magazine, the fact that it was actually closed down. Like there was no Dunn magazine. I was like, oh wow, I didn't know that. And then Jen Ripple emailed me a week later and was like, hey, you need to edit your podcast because that's total BS.
Right.
we're not closed. That's a pretty big slip. Yeah.
Right. That's a pretty big slip. So I had no idea. I had no clue. And I, of course, told Jen, like, yeah, I'll edit that, clean it up for sure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Get you on the podcast. I mean, well, here's another one for you guys. You're going to love this one. So this is a crazy story, and I'll just do it real quick for you guys because you'll probably have one of these. So Tom Bai, editor of Drake magazine, right, had him on the podcast, and he told this story about this synthetic medical marijuana grow thing down in, I think it was in Colorado or whatever, and it was tied in with conservation and stuff. Anyways, the people that were part of this grow, it was this gal and her dad ended up going to prison because they were literally like, people were like dying because they were selling this stuff, which wasn't marijuana, which was just a synthetic chemical that was, and they were selling it as marijuana. And so the people went to prison. And then later I was talking to, and so Tom aired that whole story on the podcast. I was like, wow, this is crazy. And the Deneke Lodges, right, up in Alaska, they were I've known about them for years. Well, Tom said that how the owners of Deneke was this person who went to prison. And I'm like, whoa, so they still own the lodges? And he explained about this. Anyways, it was kind of a crazy story. I'm like, wow, that seems nuts. Fast forward a few months later, I'm talking to, I didn't even realize it, but it was her husband who didn't go to jail, but he still runs the Deneke Lodges. We were talking about some Stoffline Trip stuff. And she, who was in prison, somehow heard about that her husband was talking to us. She sent me an email, a very scathing email, and saying like that episode with Tom Bai was total BS. He made up a bunch of stuff. I'm out of prison. I'm totally saved. I'm feeling better. And like, so that happened, right? So imagine you get that. What is your response?
Crazy.
What I did was I sent an email back right away to, well, first of all, maybe what would you guys be? Do you want to hear my email or do you want to take a guess? What would you say to that whole thing when she gives you that email?
I would just say like wrong address. Sorry. I would just run.
run
right. Right. So, and it was a lawsuit. It was like there was a huge, they sued Tom Bai for like hundreds of millions of, right, something.
Wow, that's crazy,
really.
Man. What did you say to this? Like, what?
Yeah, how
so
did
my
you
email
respond?
was this. Here's my response. I sent her pretty much right away. I just said, I can't remember her name, but I said, "Hey Sue, wow, this sounds like a terrible thing to happen. I'm so sorry. I'm really great. It's great to hear you're out of prison and you're doing better."
Yeah.
And I said to her, "You know what? I don't know. I just let people talk, but if you want to come on my podcast and share your side of the story, you have an open invitation." And she reached back out and she said, "Man, thank you. That's so amazing." And it was like, and it was good.
Yeah, that's
good. Yeah,
that is good for sure. Yeah, I mean that's a
sticky
tricky
situation. That's for
I
sure.
know.
Yeah.
I know. So, but that's one of those things where you're in the middle. Like Tom Bai, I mean, I think is a great guy.
Yeah,
I trust him. He reported on a story, and then somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you're right. Like you have conversations with people, and it's sort of like, I mean, like what can you do sometimes, right? You kind of have to just.
Also, this is so like nuanced and esoteric. Like, it's not like you can maybe even
check
sometimes
that
fact check,
even.
Yeah. Right.
fishing people's
No.
backstories.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
You know, like
some of these people, Google doesn't even, or you put them in ChatGPT, they don't even know the person, right? You're interviewing these
Yeah.
people
They're
that
like-
don't even pop up.
yeah,
Totally.
It's not,
Totally.
It's not like it's some famous person. Which so, you guys, this has been great. I just want to leave this. We've kind of been, down the road here. I feel like I've had a great time. How's it been on your side being interviewed? Do you guys enjoy this?
Yeah, it's super fun, man. Yeah, thanks for having us on. Like, it's been really cool to chat, and I mean, you're a great show, and it's just cool to get to talk to another podcaster. And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Likewise.
it's awesome. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
Cool.
I mean, yeah, like we said, I think we all like podcasting and chatting and learning about each other, and it's cool that you came on our show and now we're on yours, and
There you
it's
go.
great.
All
I
right.
love it.
Well, we'll send
Yeah.
everybody out to the SoFly podcast, and
No, thank you.
obviously you're out there everywhere. We'll put links in the show notes, and yeah, we'll definitely be in touch. And maybe down the line we can partner up on something. Maybe one of these trips. Maybe when I get to Ontario, I'll
Yeah.
That'd be
gotta
sick,
get
dude, for sure.
Yeah, it'd be great
100%.
to have you out here. And
Come fish pike.
yeah.
yeah,
Pike, smallmouth. So you got one out of Ontario. I know you've got everything: Atlantic salmon, brook trout. Let's leave it with that. So one rest of your days, you can only pick one Ontario fish species to fish for. Aldo, why don't you? Let's start with you.
northern pike for sure.
Northern pike, okay.
Yeah.
Mitch?
I'd probably say the same, but I kind of want to say walleye just because I like them so much.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but they're like definitely not as fun to fish for as pike. But I'm gonna say walleye.
Yeah. Well, okay.
All right,
so
right
walleye.
on. Mhm.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we'll leave it there. Thanks again for all your time, and we'll be in touch with you. And yeah, excited to see that next episode. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks,
man.
Thank you so much.